Good morning. Welcome to the December meeting of the Knoxville Historic Zoning Commission. This meeting is broadcast on several TV stations, so please remember to speak clearly and directly into the microphone. Dallas, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, Commissioner Blackburn,
Here.
Commissioner Eason, Commissioner Bradley,
Here.
Commissioner Fox,
Here.
Commissioner Hearns,
Here.
Commissioner Mitchell is excused, Commissioner Randazzo,
Here.
Commissioner Tillman,
Here.
Commissioner Webster.
Here.
That's 7 present.
Thank you. At this time, we'll have swearing in of speakers. If you wish to speak on an item, please stand now and answer with "I do" to the following affirmation. I solemnly affirm that the testimony I'm about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you. We ask that all speakers please limit their presentation to 5 minutes. We also ask that speakers please give their name and address before speaking. Please sign in at the desk by legibly printing your name and address. Appeals of any Historic Zoning Commission decisions may be made to Chancery Court within 60 days of the date of this meeting. This time we'll have approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
All right, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you. Lindsay, do you have any staff reports?
There were no level 1 COAs issued since the last meeting.
All right, then we will get into our cases. The first case is on Scenic Drive, 800 Blows Ferry Road, and it is case 12B23HZ.
Okay, so I'll give a brief summary of the scope of work and I'll let the applicants clarify anything that I've missed. So this project involves new secondary structures, a new porch and greenhouse addition, and then exterior rehabilitation of the existing rear addition. So there are new secondary structures involved, a new garage, carport, and studio structure that will be constructed to the rear of the main house. And then the studio, so here the studio is adjacent to an open stair. This overall secondary structure massing is 68 feet 8 inches wide by 24 feet deep. They will have a flat roof. The flat roof structures will extend into a terrace, which you can see here. Which will be formed by extending those garage walls and building up the land to create a flat area. The new structures will contain flat roofs. They'll have white painted brick exteriors to match the primary house and a multi-light garage door. There will be a painted steel canopy structure that extends west to connect to the secondary structures to the rear additions. There are new additions, a 16-foot 2-inch wide by 8-foot 6-inch deep greenhouse. You can see that here. It's enclosed with glass. It's proposed for the northeast corner of the house. The greenhouse will be connected to the house via a flat roof. And then on the southeast corner of the structure, there'll be a flat roof porch supported by painted steel columns that project from the existing addition. So you can see the existing conditions here. And you can see this is a scope of work that will receive exterior rehab. So this is an existing addition dating to the 1960s. We have some photographs if we go back. You can see the gable roof there. So the applicants are proposing to remove that gable roof and construct a flat roof structure above it. You can see in the renderings, which will connect to the porch and greenhouse and then also connect towards the secondary structures. This will feature new multi-light steel windows. And then we can see there's some exterior rehab scopes of work on the primary house, including a new slate roof to replace the asphalt shingles, a new flat roof canopy over the entry, and then replacement of the non-historic window shutters. So here are some elevation views of the secondary structures to be constructed. Some views of that modified addition, which will receive a new roof. And then a rear view of the secondary structures. So some of the staff comments. This is proposed for the rear of the property behind the primary structure. Due to the slope and the topography, it'll be minimally visible, if visible at all. The secondary structures will be proportionate in height and scale to the primary, and it'll be set into the hillside to further reduce that scale. The exterior materials will be compatible with the primary structure. The additions are modest in size and relate to the structure via that new roof. This wide front gable roof on the rear addition, it did not contribute to the architectural integrity of the house. Just to go back to some photos here. It's not proportionate to the house itself, so the removal of the gable and the installation of a flat roof will reduce the overall proportions and connect it to the new work on the property. In an NC overlay, the standalone exterior rehab is not reviewed, but the applicant has included that work proposed for the primary house as part of this overall project. Overall, these scopes meet the design guidelines. The installation of a new slate roof to match the original will contribute to the house's overall character. So staff's recommending approval of 12B23HZ as submitted.
Okay. Is the applicant present? Is the applicant present? Would like to speak? You don't have to.
But no, nothing to say unless there's questions.
Okay, good. All right. Do we have any neighborhood input, Lindsay?
I did not receive any input from the neighborhood.
Okay. Well, I'll give you some input from the neighborhood. I live right down the street from this house, and it sits very high on a hill. The addition that they're adding to it won't be visible from the street, so there's not really impact from the street or from the neighborhood, but it is a very nice design and looks very compatible. I think it's a handsome project.
Yeah, this is a beautiful application, and appreciate your input and including some of the history of the home. That was informative, and I appreciate that.
Any comments from the board? No? All right. We entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve as submitted.
Thank you. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Our next case is in Mechanicsville at 1021 Tulip Avenue. It's case 12C-23-HZ.
Okay, so this is the proposed installation of sections of vinyl siding. So new vinyl siding is proposed for the sections that are currently exposed to the sheathing, including the front dormer here, sections of the left side elevation, which you can see exposed in the photos, and then the upper gable field on the right side elevation. New vinyl soffit and fascia are proposed in sections we're currently missing. And then one element I'd bring, this is sort of an after the fact recognition, that does appear that a window has been replaced. I've got photographs of what it replaced. It did not replace a historic window, but I'll let the applicant speak to that. To run through some findings, so this applicant is responding to a letter from Neighborhood Codes Enforcement proposing to install vinyl siding on sections of the building where it's currently missing. The open sections of exterior wall show plywood sheathing, asphalt shingles, and small sections of wood lap siding. The applicant made a similar request to the HCC in March 2012. There, the staff recommendation stated, and I'll read this because it sort of informs this discussion, since not all exterior wood siding or original wood siding is intact, and there are a variety of siding materials on the house, including vinyl on the outer layer, the staff recommendation was that the existing vinyl stay in place until such time as the owner is able to replace it with wood siding on the east side where the new vinyl is partially installed, and I think that's speaking to this. Complete the installation in order to prevent further moisture from entering into the exposed parts of the house. This option is recommended only because existing vinyl is on the house, and the recommendation should not be construed as approval of vinyl siding on houses with intact wood siding. So that was the staff recommendation in 2012. The commission ultimately denied the installation of vinyl siding and requested the applicant submit a new plan. The applicant did not submit a follow-up application. So the relevant design guidelines here are that synthetic siding is inappropriate as replacement siding on existing buildings. Replacement siding should duplicate the original. The guidelines also state that if artificial siding is present and must be removed to repair the building structurally, it can be replaced if no more than 25% of the siding is removed. If more than 25% on any elevation is removed, it can't be replaced. This siding is not proposed to be installed for structural purposes, but the siding appears to be under or close to 25% of the wall area on the 3 involved elevations. There's not a substantial amount of intact wood siding below the vinyl. The vinyl siding is applied above asphalt shingles, plywood sheathing, and then some wood sheathing. We have some additional photos from the 2012 review where, in particular, right here by the door, you can see a small section of wood. The applicant didn't follow up with the HCC after the 2012 review, and some of these same sections of sheathing appeared to be open to the elements as discussed then. So recognizing the minor scope of the repairs that measure under 25% of each wall area, the lack of original siding on the building, the installation of small sections of vinyl won't further detract from the house's overall architectural integrity. Moreover, the existing sheathing and framing should be made watertight to ensure its continued condition until a current or new owner initiates a full siding replacement. So recognizing the condition of the house, the lack of original materials, and the minor scope of work as proposed, staff's recommending approval of 12C23HC as proposed.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is the applicant present? Would like to speak?
I'm trying to.
Sir, we state your name and
Oh,
address,
I'm
please.
sorry, Sam Daniel Jr. And it's 1021 Tulip is the property we're talking about, so I don't.
Thank you.
I purchased this house, I guess, 38 years ago or so. My father and I have purchased 4 properties in what later became the historic overlay district. On the 3 other properties we owned, there was enough intact wood siding existing that we were able to maintain that siding, and they still are that way today. This property, however, had been previously burned. I bought it. It was a burnout. And there was evidently quite a bit of extensive renovations done to it prior to my purchase. It had 3 layers of siding on it when we did the renovation. It had the original wood siding, which was in very bad shape. It had a layer of, I don't know what you call it, it's asphalt that was stamped to look like brick, and they come in sections and you just nail it. It makes it look like brick, but it's asphalt. And then on top of that, there was steel siding, and then also there was asphalt shingle siding in lots of the area. So when we removed all those sidings, we discovered that many of the windows weren't in their original locations. They were aluminum windows with aluminum storm windows over them. They had been moved from the original locations. The interior walls had all been moved. I think there's only 2 existing interior walls from the existing building in there. The front porch, of course, was closed in and was gone. So basically, there's very little historical value. There was nothing on the inside of any historical value. We actually had to remove 1/3 of the floor joist in the back of the building and replace it with concrete because it was so far gone. But the existing wood siding there that is existing, because it's been nailed on so many times, it's just not appropriate. You couldn't use it. It'd have to be removed, what's there. And the cost, I had figured at excess of $40,000, which would make I'd have to raise the rent on my tenants 40% to cover that kind of cost. I just want to give my tenants a decent place to live at a reasonable price, and I'm just trying to do that.
Okay, thank you. Is the neighborhood rep here?
Hi, I'm online. This is Carlin Herod, the Old Mechanicsville neighborhood representative.
We can hear.
A bunch of neighbors, we actually met about this last night, and some people independently over the last couple of weeks. And the opinion of the neighborhood is that vinyl siding wouldn't be appropriate, and we would really like to see it replaced with wood. Additionally, there were some neighbors that thought that the front gable window that was installed without going or replaced and without going before this board, or this body thought that that was inappropriate as well. And we'd really like, we like to maintain the historic charm of the neighborhood, and think following the guidelines are really important. And for that reason, we'd really hope that the Historic Zoning Commission could stand with the neighborhood and follow similar to their guidelines in 2012.
Okay, thank you. Commission, I'll open it up for discussion.
I have a question for the applicant. Can you speak to the front-facing dormer window?
That was put in so that it would be an egress window. I couldn't find a double hung or any single hung window that would allow exit from that. You can get onto the roof and go around to the back, and it's not a big drop. I just did that for safety
Mm-hmm. And when was that work done?
just recently.
Okay. And was there any siding on that dormer?
It was in bad shape, but yeah, there was siding on it.
What kind of siding was it?
It's that vinyl siding.
It was vinyl
The
siding.
40-year-old vinyl siding.
Okay.
Right. Like I said, we owned 4 properties in the historic area. We did renovations on 2 of them. I think we made a significant contribution back when this neighborhood was one of the worst in the city. We maintained the historic value exterior on 3 of the 4 properties that we purchased. All the properties we purchased, had we not purchased them, might have been demolished, and they wouldn't exist today. And like I said, the wood siding, and this was done through the city rehab program, this particular house, and it was judged 40 years ago that the wood siding was not reusable. So it is an economic dead end to put the wood on it. And so the house would have been torn down. It had been in it had a fire.
Okay. I asked Lindsay to give us a Google view to get some context of what the other houses look like.
I'd note that in your historic overlay brochure, you have 7 pictures and photographs of the properties we own.
It looks like it was 2 4/4 windows that were replaced. Is that correct?
Well, the windows that are in there weren't original. I mean, I installed those windows since I purchased the house.
Okay,
Yeah.
6/6.
Every
Okay.
window in there I've put in there since the renovation.
Could you tell from the framing what the original window opening size was, even if you didn't have the panes?
They were taller windows. I don't remember. They had the weights and, but all that was gone. And like I said, even the window locations from when I bought it were not the window locations or the door locations of the original property. And we could tell that by the framing. When you get down to the bare framing, you can see what used to be what.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. I wanted to know what the bare framing told you about that front-facing dormer. Because the single, I'm guessing that's a casement window, that doesn't seem appropriate for the proportions of the dormer. It doesn't seem historically appropriate. While it may meet egress, I think you also could find an egress window that fits the old historic opening.
Well, I had installed 2 windows in that. You can see it on one of the previous pictures. I had 2 windows in it that I installed in the renovation. Right, you can see it right there. And if I remember right, it was 40 years ago, that only had a very small opening in it. They weren't using the upstairs for anything. It was just like nothing. It had a floor deck on it, but they were just using it for storage. I have no idea what it was used for, 90 years ago. But when I purchased it, it was just junk in there.
Okay.
I think my concern is contextually, how does vinyl siding going to fit in with the rest of the neighborhood? We heard the neighborhood rep say that they'd like to see wood. What are the percentages of vinyl siding and wood siding just around on this street and in this area?
It's mostly wood. There are some houses that are old asbestos panels. but it's mostly wood. Like I said, 3 of the 4 that we purchased in that area, we were able to maintain as wood.
I have a question for Lindsay. What do the guidelines state about vinyl siding? Is there a specific or about siding in general?
Obviously, there are the overall guidelines that synthetic siding is inappropriate. It's not allowed as replacement siding on existing buildings. Replacement siding should duplicate the original. However, Guideline 11 also says if artificial siding is present on any elevation of a building and must be removed in order to repair the building structurally, it can be replaced on the building if no more than 25% of any elevations artificial siding is removed. If more than 25% of the artificial siding on any elevation is removed for repair, it cannot be replaced.
Okay, now artificial siding has existed on this property for 75 years. So,
I was just asking for clarification to make sure that your recommendation is aligned with the guidelines. That's all I'm clarifying.
Yeah, I think it is. Like Lindsay described the 25% of an elevation, which wouldn't mean that the dormer stands on its own. It is, the way I interpret the guidelines is that elevation includes the enclosed front porch. You know, that dormer is in its own single elevation. Otherwise, I would love to see that just as its own wood siding portion. The back, it does seem borderline. I won't go into a whole rant, but that photo of the side, that's what vinyl siding looks like. It blows away in the wind, it becomes trash. This is part of why we don't allow it, besides just the looks. This is functioning as intended, as I believe.
well, of course, yeah, the siding blew off because it wasn't completed. Yeah.
So the siding, it was never installed in the top?
No, on that elevation where it's on the left side there,
Yeah.
we were stopped right there by the city. And so it got left that way.
I just provide clarification. I spoke to this in the staff findings, but in 2012, the Historic Zoning Commission denied the installation of vinyl siding, and then it appears that this stuff has remained open since 2012.
So it's just been, sorry, yeah.
Why did you leave it unprotected?
Excuse me?
Why did you leave it unprotected for so long?
The city said I couldn't do anything with it.
Well, you were told you couldn't install vinyl siding, but I'm sure wood siding would have been an acceptable situation.
Like I said, the cost of the wood siding, to completely remove all of the siding and to put it back was prohibitive, and to maintain this as a rental property. It's been a rental property the whole time.
Knowing what you know now about wood siding cost, do you wish you'd done it in 2012? I would have loved to have replaced some wood siding in 2012. The prices were probably a third of what they are now.
Right.
So as I understand it, you started to do wood siding in 2012.
No.
Started to do vinyl siding in 2012. The city said you weren't, this body said you weren't allowed to do vinyl siding.
Right.
He stopped, left some of the house wrap that we see in tatters now, and plywood exposed for 10 years.
Well,
So this is really, it's a request for repair, not because it blew off, so you can forget my slander of the product. It's because it wasn't ever there. So this is really, this 25% is, should we continue work that was previously disallowed? I'm kind of working it out in my head. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, and then further.
He's responding to a letter from Neighborhood Codes Enforcement. So he received a complaint about the open gable and is trying to mitigate a codes enforcement letter.
Okay.
It's not an application, again, other than that.
So if the neighborhood had not complained, it would still be in this condition?
Can neighborhood codes enforcement speak to this process at all?
Neighborhood codes is no longer part of plans review and inspection.
I don't think so, yeah.
So no one's here.
How you doing? Peter Aarons, Plans Review and Building Inspections. This probably started when Neighborhood Codes was under me. It's one of those things where we enforce the property maintenance code so that we don't see the continual deterioration of properties. I don't know if this was based on a complaint or if this was based on a proactive, thank you, it was based on a complaint. But when we see violations of the property maintenance code, if people aren't maintaining their property, our code and ordinances require them to, so we force them to. And that's why they're before you today.
I have one more question. Since we have an after-the-fact review of a bedroom egress window, what does your process look like? Is this submit plans for a building permit, for over-the-counter permit, or how would you handle this situation? Regardless of how we do the siding.
Sure. We would require a building permit because it appears that the window opening is revised and it looks like they modified the header. You didn't modify the header.
It was wider, and so we just put jacks on each side of that.
We'd probably,
Existing headers there.
we'd verify that as part of the process.
This is a question for the applicant. You mentioned that that upper window was replaced as part of a city program?
No,
Oh, okay.
the whole renovation 40 years ago, 38 years ago, was done through the city rehab program. And at that time, Rogers Dowdy, who was my contact with the city, had worked for the city forever, and I came to the conclusion that the wood siding was beyond use and repair, that it would have to be completely removed and replaced, and that it was, that economically would have killed the project and the house probably would have been torn down.
Lindsay, is this house contributing in any way to a district?
Yeah, actually, it is listed as contributing
It is.
in the design guidelines.
Interesting.
So when you created an egress window, was that in response to creating a second rental property on the upper level?
No, it's been
Okay.
it's been rental all along.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, there's 3 units in that. It's been that way since I did the renovation 40 years ago.
And I'm assuming that's when the porch was enclosed as well,
No, the porch was enclosed
originally?
way,
Oh,
yeah, way, way before I bought it.
If
Like I said, the fireplaces had all been removed. I think there were originally 3 fireplaces, 2 as you go in and then on there, and then 1 in the kitchen. They were all gone. There was no mantles or trim or anything that was historic. In 2 of the other properties that we owned, we were able to reuse the existing trim and actually put in trim to match the existing historic trim. One's on Dedrick and one's on Oak. We actually did another renovation on Oak, Mr. Quirk House, the metal roof, we did a renovation of that.
So I was mistaken earlier when I assumed the vinyl siding had blown away in the wind like I'd seen that product do before. So considering I don't think it's a repair or from wind damage or a product failure, I'm less inclined to approve this 25%-ish vinyl installation. And I think if costs are the issue for you, I think you need to weigh the cost of water intrusion versus new siding.
But there is no water intrusion now. As bad as that looks, I have tenants in there, there's no water intrusion. And they're actually very nice apartments. Outside looks like.
I mean, I wouldn't roll the dice with exposed plywood in our climate.
Well,
And I don't think neighborhood codes enforcement would like that either.
well, no, I don't either. I would like to make it all look like the back of it.
I mean, just from an energy and sustainability standpoint, it won't meet any code.
No, there's no reason to believe the back of that building conforms with 2018 IECC. And I mean, unfortunately, with water intrusion, from a tenant's perspective, you're not going to find out you have it until it's a major problem.
Well, I would,
If anybody else has anything, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to deny the application.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion from the board?
I'd clarify that Commissioner Randazzo had recused herself due to a previous financial involvement with the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
I guess the only concern is just this applicant has shown that this property may sit for another 11 years or something before. Like, is there a way we can possibly meet in the middle to get what we need? But I feel like that's got to be on the applicant. You had 11 years to come up with a remediation plan that fit the guidelines. So it's disappointing. But if we deny the vinyl, I don't think this applicant, based off past behavior, is going to show that he's going to do anything with it. I mean, I struggle with thinking that it would be that there's not any water intrusion. I struggle with just the detriment it is right now to the neighborhood. And while I appreciate the work you've done on your other homes in the neighborhood, is there not some way you can come up with a plan that gets a little closer? So
there is no water. I'd be glad to have all of you go through. There is no water intrusion anywhere. You can inspect the building 100%, but
Peter, what is the process, since there has been a complaint? What are the obligations of the city to enforce this? I mean, what happens from here if we deny it?
It is on the radar of our neighborhood codes enforcement group. And so they have a separate process whereby if compliance is not obtained, they can bring this applicant before the public officer for a repair order or a repair demo order. There's a pretty big stick associated with the public officer.
right. On the letter, I got it, fines and possible demolition of the property. The city is struggling to maintain reasonable rental property, and maybe this is one reason why.
All right. I'm a vice chair, and our chair is disposed. So I guess Dallas, if you can call it. Do we still have a quorum with a recusal? And okay. Oh, thank God.
Let's just give it 10 more seconds and avoid the complicated questions.
So we had a motion, a second. Are we ready to vote? Okay.
Peter explained that there would be a separate process for the complaint through codes enforcement.
All right, thank you. Do you want to do roll call or just? Yeah, all right. Dallas, please.
Okay. Commissioner Blackburn,
Nay?
Commissioner Eason, Commissioner Bradley,
Aye.
Commissioner Fox, Commissioner Hearns is recused. Commissioner Hearns.
Nay.
Commissioner Randazzo is recused. Commissioner Tillman,
Yes.
Commissioner Webster.
yes.
That is 4 yes, 3 no.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll follow up with you, Mr. Daniel. So it was the motion carried to deny the vinyl siding, and I'll follow up with you.
meantime, I'm having an attack.
Okay.
Yeah, anyway. Okay.
Okay. So our next case is
Here we go. Edgewood Park City. It's at 2100 Washington Pike. It's case 12A23-HZ.
okay. This is 2100 Washington Avenue. I'm not sure why it printed out as Pike on our drawings, but it's clarified I'll clarify that on the staff report. So the application here is coming from the city of Knoxville. It's a proposed demolition of a contributing structure. So I will go through some of the staff findings, and I'm going to let the applicant speak to this a good deal more. I will note that the existing Edgewood Park City design guidelines lack specific design guidelines on documentation. The Historic Zoning Commission has approved the revised design guidelines, and those will be re-reviewed and adopted by City Council in early 2024. They have very specific guidelines on demolition, and those are available in your staff report to use as a reference. And we can go through those as we discuss, but just to discuss the property, what I have in front of us are just a great deal of exterior and interior photographs of the property. The city has an extensive packet showing structural engineers' reports, the demolition by neglect process, a great deal of information for you guys. So that is available in the case file online and printed out. So to discuss this building is a contributing resource to the National Register Historic District and the local historic overlay. There are some COAs on file, but they include a roof replacement and mortar repointing in November 2008. One of those was made by the church. And then the same application in 2016 that was made by the next property owner. It's unclear if those scopes of work were ever completed. The property has been without active utility service since May 2010. The most recent church owner sold the property in 2015, and then the property remained vacant and unutilized. The city acquired the property by the demolition by neglect process in April 2022. The property has a long history of codes enforcement actions via the public officer and the Better Building Board. The city has stabilized the property over the last year with multiple tarps, fencing, security, asbestos mediation, and interior stabilization so that the city could continue to show this property. It was listed in the Homemaker program in June 2022. The application from the city details the 4 unsuccessful applications for the city Homemaker program. They have extensive documentation of the interior and exterior condition as part of those. The city has shown the property on 19 dates to at least 75 people, and rehabilitation costs have been quoted between $858,000 and $1.5 million. The building is extremely deteriorated, including the roof cladding and framing. It's covered with a tarp right now. The exterior brick cladding, the wood framing underneath from both roof leaks and extensive termite damage, the floor framing and subfloors adjacent to the exterior walls where water has gotten in, and the foundation. According to contractor quotes and the structural engineer's assessment, the walls are most likely founded on the soil rather than a concrete foundation, and part of the side of the front building corner has pushed in and partially collapsed and would need to be rebuilt. So work on the building would ultimately result in the building's partial or complete reconstruction instead of rehabilitation. And I'm just going through some of these interior photos. So in the opinion of staff, the application clearly depicts the exploration of all other alternatives to demolition by the city of Knoxville. One of the design guidelines says before, explore all possible alternatives to demolition before moving forward. So that's from the design guidelines. And the city has explored alternatives. Applications have explored the possibility of converting the structure to another use, rehabbing it to a single family house or a duplex. Relocating the structure, that's another guideline recommendation, would not be possible due to the deteriorated condition of the building's foundation, framing, and exterior cladding materials. And the building does continue to deteriorate, and as it's winter, there's precipitation in the freeze-thaw cycle, so the building may be closer to collapsing. The building does retain architectural integrity in the opinion of staff, so that's another element of the design guidelines. Should the HCC approve demolition, staff would recommend a specific plan for mitigation be developed in advance. The city can work with the neighborhood planning staff and Knox Heritage to create a specific plan for documentation and salvage of character defining features, including the stained glass windows, the pews, the interior pocket door, and any brick masonry elements that remain. And that plan could be reviewed by the Historic Zoning Commission. And then documentation and salvage should be completed as soon as possible as the building's condition does continue to worsen. So staff's recommending postponement of 12A23HZ for 1 month to the January 18th meeting, recognizing the continual deterioration of the highly significant building and allowing the city and planning staff the opportunity to collaborate on a mitigation plan, and that plan could be submitted to the HCC for approval.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is the applicant present? Would like to speak?
Hello, I'm Kathy Ellis. I work for the Housing and Neighborhood Development Department with the City of Knoxville. And I'd like to just clarify some information that was on the staff findings. The property was not acquired by the demolition by neglect process. It was actually acquired by the Knoxville Blighted and Deteriorated Ordinance process. Demolition by neglect is to stabilize a property, so that that doesn't have any money for funding. And the tarps were actually addressed and stabilized in 2016. So that did not go on over the last year. And both of those tarps went on in 2016. And so we did do the asbestos mediation this past year and had that removed. So the exterior and interior stabilization continues with me taking people in on a regular basis. The fire marshal now recognizes that it is a property that is dangerous and that anyone entering must acknowledge that they are entering an unstable and potentially could collapse by entering the property. So that too is injurious to the health and safety of anyone that I take in. And I've taken myself out many little animals that have gotten in that have lost their life because they fell from the open roof area. But it's not that we want to see the property gone. We absolutely don't. And we've done, I think, a very, very good job of having people see the property on multiple occasions. I've made myself available at any time, even on weekends and after work hours, so that people could go in and view the properties and bring their contractors when they need to. And the cold weather with the threat of snow and ice on that roof is very concerning. The walls are literally, they're just crumbling on the inside. And the amount of money that we have spent on the interior stabilization, we've have to replace the wood on the floor where we have people step safely just because it continues to rain and the wood disintegrates. So that budget is being utilized, which, you know, it's just not safe to continue to take people in there. It's not a healthy environment. And we don't want to demolish it. And we have someone who was a previous applicant who has reached out, and I received a homemaker's application from them just this morning that they would potentially like to move forward with another application, and that is fantastic. And I'm more than happy to work with them on that. But what I want to have in place is to be able to move forward with the demolition in case a catastrophic event happens and not have to come back to the committee for that. We have already worked with and are continuing to work with Knox Heritage and have a plan in place to reach out to Architectural Antics and Willow Creek Galleries. Jennifer Montgomery is reaching out as well with to High Oaks Construction for some partners on utilizing some of the historical characteristics like the pews, the windows, any of the doors. So we've already taken care of all that, actually. I would propose not to delay it another month and for us to go ahead and have the approval but to know that that doesn't mean that we are going to raise that property right away. In fact, I will probably not be in the office next month. I have a grandchild who he was born with congenital heart defects, and he will be going back to Vanderbilt in January, and I will be with him during his heart surgery. So just know that I will continue to work on this property and with the new applicant, but as long as we have the demolition granted, we will stand down until we make sure that this applicant can move forward. And it looks like a good application. And the first application looked good, great. It's to make sure that the funding is there. And that's what's going to take the time. So if we need to wait another 2 months for them to get that before the actual homemakers committee, that's fine. But if something were to happen and we got a dangerous snow and the roof actually did cave in, then I may need to go ahead and take it down. And I wouldn't want to have to come back to you guys for that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ellis. Is the neighborhood representative here would like to speak?
Yes, I'm David Nix, Park Ridge community. I know a good bit about this property. In fact, was actually at the auction the day that it was auctioned off, and actually was an active bidder on the property at the time. But I think the sad thing is now the previous owner, has let it sit at the point that it needed a roof, 8 years ago when it sold at auction. It needed a roof then. It wasn't bad, nowhere like what it is now. But I think the community, does see that, I guess it's to the point of saving something rather than ending up with nothing. And I think that's at the point that we're at now because of the years of deterioration and not having a roof, 8 years ago, when it probably, would have still have been, salvageable, could save the structure and to be converted to something that would be more of a community viable structure. But I think the community itself would like to see something. And I think it, like I said, we're down now to the final straw, and and unless this applicant here can get their funding together, I have a feeling that the majority is going to end up in the landfill.
Yeah.
And because we technically probably really don't have a salvage company that would be capable of going in and removing the stuff out of this building, because it's not a house, it's actually a church. And so everything in is kind of oversized. And so, but anyway, we're going along with either the delay or what Kathy is saying. And I talked with Kathy yesterday, and saying, well, they're not going to get a demo permit, agree, a motion through this board today, and then go tomorrow or just run down and get a demo permit and they start turning it down tomorrow. Which it would behoove the city for something to become of this and not waste all their effort. So, like I said, we'd like to see something rather than nothing. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nix. I'll open the floor up for. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Shannon Elliott. I'm at 2517 Jefferson Avenue, and I've written mine down because to keep me on track. So. Good morning. I've lived in Knoxville for 25 years and Park Ridge since 2006. I'm a licensed architect with 10 years experience in the industry, particularly in HUD-funded multifamily housing. Most recently, I was a project architect on the Austin Homes Phase 1 redevelopment with KCDC. I'm also an avid gardener, seed saver, and passionate about food sovereignty issues within our East Knoxville community. Last year, my spouse and I prepared a proposal, along with the help of Tillman Companies, Travis Tillman's help, for a new construction and partial renovation for this building for a community center and affordable housing units. The proposal was approved through the Homemakers program. Unfortunately, at that time, the price tag was unachievable. Excuse me. Our intent for the property remains the same, and we've refined our design for the site to include 4 two-bedroom affordable housing units on the east and west sides and a community-focused area in the center of the lower level and the main sanctuary. The center would serve our neighborhood and the greater Knoxville community with gathering space for workshops, game and movie nights, Lego buildings, plays, meetings, and anything else we came up with, and could serve as a space for the Park Ridge Community Organization to reconvene there instead of the Chancellor Y. Those are just a few examples, and we see a good partnership with groups like Seed, Rooted East, and Real Good Kitchen. A component of our layout is a seed saving storage facility. That's a critical part of our program because we feel that that doesn't really exist programmatically in our community. So seed storage, the north-facing basement wall is an ideal space for a walk-in freezer for long-term seed storage and would act as a seed repository for our community. Given the lack of structural integrity, the significant deterioration and patchwork repairs, which is, am I talking in this weird? That's like a lot of feedback. Or is it just me? Okay. Given the lack of structural integrity, significant deterioration, and the patchwork repairs, which is thoroughly documented in the case file, the opportunity for renovation and preservation has passed, as we all are aware. We'd like the city to consider a deconstruction process to preserve as much brick, lumber, architectural features, and historical artifacts in a rebuild of a new building on the site. Deconstruction is an environmentally friendly alternative to demolition and relocation. It involves carefully documenting, dismantling, labeling, and storing building components for reuse in a new building. The process also creates job opportunities given the amount of materials that have to be processed, which could be another opportunity to partner with Seed's Green Construction Program. Many jurisdictions across the nation have used this process. I reviewed the building with the owner of the Reuse People. They're a national nonprofit that's skilled in deconstruction projects, and they confirmed that the material would be a viable site for a large-scale salvage and reuse. We've also discussed this strategy recently with Knox Heritage and Jennifer Montgomery and other stakeholders just to get their feedback as this is a strategy. In lieu of demolition, there is an opportunity for the property to serve as a pilot project to demonstrate to developers, builders, and designers a viable option to reduce municipal waste and the carbon footprint, which aligns with the city's sustainability goals. Our proposal seeks to honor the history of the Society of Friends, the Greater Refuge Temple, and all who have used and loved this building. Our rebuild would recreate the structure in a similar style, scale, and proportion that aligns to, I think, number 9 of the design guidelines, while addressing life safety code and accessibility requirements. As the first Quaker church in Knoxville and potentially the location of the first female pastor as discovered by Jack Neely and the Knoxville History Project, there is important history to cherish, document, and display. At my current position, I also have access to high-resolution 3D scanning, so at the very least there's the potential to scan the property with a laser scanner, document that, and create a model as an archive, regardless of how any of this goes. I'd like to pursue that just overall. We understand time is critical and a request a postponement of the demolition decision to provide an additional month for aligning our fundraising, additional community partners, and the establishment of a deconstruction partner for this work. And Mr. Tillman has looked at, proposed, his skill that he would work with us again for our proposal. I'd like to express my gratitude to everyone who's worked toward trying to save this over the years. And it's an important piece of history and look forward to any potential collaborations to honor this exceptional site.
Thank you. Any questions for her from the board? So summarize, what are you asking for? What?
Just a postponement and well, I guess it's an alignment, as Kathy, you mentioned. There's whether you say we're going to demo in a month, you've got that amount of time. We need time to prepare the funding component. So we're looking for, I think we're all on the same page. We're just looking for additional time to find those partners that can help fund and to ask the overall question that is careful deconstruction and rebuild something that would be approved, which I believe it would be. It's similar to what we proposed prior.
Okay. I don't mean this disrespectfully, so don't take it that way, but we've been working on this. I'm on the Knox Heritage Vintage Properties Committee with Jennifer, and we've been working with Kathy on this for well over 2 years. Where have you been?
Yeah, I work 3 jobs, so I've been working a lot. I work full-time as an architect, and I teach part-time, and then I have another part-time job. So it's, I've been not as in alignment with being engaged with other folks, but I feel like, the time is available.
Right. Well, this sounds like a great project. I would be for it 100%, but we've kind of got Kathy in a corner here of if this building falls down tomorrow, then, we've got a problem. Kathy, would you like to address any of this?
I think that Shannon's proposal, I just got the application this morning, like at 8 o'clock. So I haven't had a lot of time to really look into it. But the original proposal she had was wonderful. And anything that she has is going to be fabulous. I'm sure that the committee will feel the same way. So we would be in great support of that. What my stance is for the community is the safety. And I just want to have in place in case something happens, and it is really very likely that something might if we get a dangerous weather situation that comes in, to be able to handle that situation quickly if need be. But and I've talked to Shannon, and I'm happy to work with her and give her some time.
But you would be responsible for that demo permit. Only you would be able to pull that trigger and make that happen, right?
That is correct.
So that could be the compromise in that we give you that responsibility.
Yes.
With Shannon knowing that no one else is going to come along and knock it down, because I'd love to see that project.
Oh, absolutely.
But I don't want to handcuff you in a liability type situation.
And the deconstruction, reconstruction is a wonderful idea. There's not a lot to probably salvage. A lot of the brick doesn't match. And in talking with Mr. Nix, we have discovered, and I talked to a gentleman who actually attends a friend's church regularly now, and he spoke with another member who used to go to this church in 1960, and said that it was moved from the 4th and Gill area, and I believe he said Lavinia Avenue, and during that move it lost some characteristics. The steeple and the upper loft were eliminated to facilitate the relocation process. So it's not a full characteristic of what the original church was that was over there. And I am going by hearsay. But he did send me, he went and talked to this gentleman who was 90 years old, and that gentleman had a picture of a plate that was provided at one of these churches, and I'll give you a copy of this so you'll have it. And it has a drawing on the plate of what that church looked like that was on the Lavinia. So it's not really a original church. It's got most of the characteristics of what probably was moved there, but it's kind of sad. And I just need to make sure that I can step in if need be. But I'm more than willing to work with, the applicant for the Homemakers Program and do whatever we need to. It's the funding that we need to get, shored up. Everybody's application that we looked at has been superb, but it's always boiled down to the funding. So that's going to be the catcher, and we realize we're going to have to allow some time for that funding to come in, but we can't grant forever.
Okay.
Kathy, I have some questions about the tarping. I'm a little confused. I think the staff report said it was tarped last year. So I remember there being a blue tarp that had completely deteriorated. And like a year ago, there was this new tarp placed. Can you speak to that? What's the timeline?
Yeah, no, the tarps were put on in 2016. The original tarp was blue, and then they put another tarp on a few months later that was black.
That's what's pictured?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The blue tarp's under there.
Right.
And it was also put on in 2016.
So things are falling through the tarp?
Oh, it's deteriorated after, 7 years. Yeah, no tarp is going to last that long. Yeah.
Miss Elliott, what is your projected timeline for your due diligence?
So we have a projected timeline. The immediate from today, would be fundraising. So crowdsourcing, we've been strategies like getting the message out, because you have the folks that are in the preservation camp. There's an educational component to say this is I don't want to say compromise, but that's essentially what it is. So between now and the January meeting, we have to have an understanding of, can we raise a substantial component of this? In addition to that, there's the affordable housing part of the building that is applicable. There's other funding that can be resourced for that portion. In addition to tax credits and all of that thing. So the first month is critical in the fundraising component to see all of us that have been working toward this, can we collaborate our efforts? And also finding, Travis and I spoke about this, it's different than, there's tons of people that can knock it down, but making sure we have the right people in place to carefully deconstruct it and understanding that process. And that's where the gentleman at the reusepeople.org I spoke with, and they do workshops. So they do training for jurisdiction stakeholders. They'll come in. So I'd like to see if that's something we could get in place to educate all of ourselves. And even worst case scenario, it doesn't work out and it has to be knocked down. I think overall there's that component of just this knowledge for Knoxville as an option for this type of thing, because this will keep happening somewhere. So this first month is the education and funding component. We've already done a schematic design, but of course then there's the COA deadline of the 2nd for the 18th meeting. There's that critical component. There's the March deadline for the Historic Preservation Fund, if this would qualify. So January to March is really getting, let's say everything goes well, then it's getting the engineers, partners on board, civil. The sanitary line runs through that sanitary line hasn't been fixed in 100 years. So utilities figuring out the technical and the how.
Yeah. Do you have a projected budget in mind?
It's the 1.5 million that we referenced.
Okay.
Yeah. And we've been strategizing some costs, footprint and things like that, but maybe it'll be less. I suspect with the utility, I think it's all that underground site work. It's a big ticket item. I don't think the building itself, and then deconstruction, I don't know how much that costs. Never done it. So.
Yeah. Have you spoken with Christine about the previous budgets that we'd put together with Knox Heritage? I think we did that about a year ago when we looked at doing quadplex there, maybe.
I didn't speak with her about her budget. I did reach out and say, just what do you think about this from a preservation perspective? And she said they'd considered deconstruction, but it doesn't align with their values. So ultimately that's not. And then the neighbor asked me, well, if you deconstruct and take those components and rebuild something new, does it count as a contributing structure? And Holly Cook said, no, it would not. But still.
I think technically a new construction would be considered non-contributing in the National Register standards. But I think in this property, as the neighborhood representative, Mr. Nix said, something is better than nothing. And a creative project that reflects I think what you guys would propose would meet the design guidelines. So I don't have concerns about that. And then I just wanted to clarify one thing on the demolition and the safety aspect, and I'll let Peter or Mark clarify if I'm saying this inaccurately, but the building official has the capacity to issue an emergency demolition permit in the instance of a safety concern, such as a fire, roof collapse due to ice or something, et cetera, right? The building official has the capacity to override the HCC or the zoning elements and issue a demolition permit if there is a emergency safety issue.
Yes, we deal with emergencies all the time, but as you've remember, we try not to go out of alignment with the zoning commission.
When y'all were talking about this, about the church being moved,
It wasn't moved.
when they're talking about the church being moved, from 4th and Gill off Livonia, I think, Davinia. It physically wasn't moved. It was deconstructed then. So if this goes through, this would be the second time this building has been deconstructed. So we were probably looking at the original, Lincoln logs or the stuff, that this thing has been, constructed and deconstructed, and that's going to be deconstructed and reconstructed yet again. Because if you look at some of the elements of I'm not a trained architect, but I worked on lots of old houses. And if you look at the way the brickwork is put on the outside, it's like it was an afterthought. There was no, it's like, okay, it was a frame building and then they decided, let's put bricks on it. And that's the reason the bricks don't match, is I think they was like scavenging bricks. Maybe they took bricks, didn't have enough bricks, but if you look at the building, there's no cornice for the bricks to end up into. They just run up the side of the wall and just stop. And you look at, and I've always looked at that building, I thought, why is that? And if you look at the browse over the windows, it's supposed to have, a lip, over the windows, but there's no framing for that. It's just, they just took the shingles and stuck them out and tacked them over it. So it's, the building has probably deteriorated worse because it was not built that great to start with. If that makes sense. There was things that was corners that was cut at the time that, it's probably has led to its demise, that it was some things that was not done right to begin with. But anyway.
Okay.
When we talk about postponement, does it have to be 1 month or could it be more months than that?
The commission has the capacity to set that or give an open-ended.
Okay.
Often I think we just say postpone and then the applicants come back when they're ready. I think in this instance, based on the applicant's request and the safety issues brought up by the applicant, I had specifically recommended 1 month, but the commission has the capacity to set either an open-ended one or a longer specific one, whichever you.
Okay. I have a little distrust of putting things on the demolition list before we really want them demolished, because I've seen homes accidentally demolished by the city, and it really scares me. And as much as I trust people, it's just, you never know what can happen.
So I've been through this building. I've read the thorough engineer's report. This building terrifies me. To be frank, from a human safety standpoint, this is a very, very difficult project. And I've wrestled with this small example. I don't know if I would send a carpenter to change the lock set on this door. I'm worried about the brick veneer wall falling out. I think when this building falls, the walls will fall out and it will hit the existing fence and possibly go beyond it. Obviously I'm open to learn more from a reuse and careful demolition standpoint. If I were to do this project today, I would put the building on the ground with heavy equipment and carefully pick through the rubble for materials, because I think it's too dangerous unless we have, robot demolition workers to try to get anything from the outside. I would be worried about moving a pew through that place, because I think the roof is obviously in such terrible state. The walls are leaning, they're rotting. The brick as its own element is, I think, one of the scariest. I also have suspicions that this house is built on fill. I think there's evidence of previous foundation repairs. We have multiple generations of brick. There's a wire face brick that runs along the bottom and multiple corners of the building that looks like it was put in after. There's places where someone previously had just started dumping concrete in a hole where water was coming in. There's a piece of sheet metal that's acting as a retaining wall in the basement. It seems like someone tried to do a really, really thorough foundation repair at one point, and it wasn't enough, which is very scary. Not that the pouring concrete, I think that was a last-ditch effort, but the soil around it, it doesn't look like soil in our historic neighborhoods. It looks like chert. You know, most of the soil you see where a gutter is overflowing or failing, you see like black, soil with little bits of glass in it. This isn't like that. This is, a very light brown with lots of bits of rock. It's the lot next door to it is kind of a pit valley. Like maybe that was the original grade of the property. There's just there's so many elements wrong with this house that I've kind of wrestled in my mind, how would I try to take out a window? And I thought you could maybe build a form as if you were building a concrete retaining wall. You build a form against the house so a worker could work almost like working in a trench box. But even setting that form, putting a 4x4 within a foot of that existing foundation, I think would be a hazard to human life. And I would love to see a careful demolition, but I think it probably has to be heavy equipment first. I think there's a lot of materials to be salvaged. I think even the non-historic brick tells a story, but that's a labor-intensive process. Even some of the mortar is failing and not the way it normally fails. You pick an old mortar and it's kind of dusty. Some of this is squishy in clay, which I've never seen in a mortar. That wasn't just set. Some of it you can actually pick out whole scoops that clumps in your hand, which I don't know what caused that. Maybe it was mixed poorly. I'm not sure. I could go on, but I think it's important to be thorough when we're talking about demolition of a property.
I think we all recognize the history of this property, but at some point, it may be too far gone. And that's always a difficult conversation for anyone on our commission to have.
Especially when we have an applicant or we have someone here that wants to try to fix it. I hate to discourage that because I applaud what you're doing and the people that you want to serve by how, the end product. It makes it difficult. If you weren't here, this would be easy.
I feel confident with, approving the demolition order and counting on Kathy's diligence to do what's best for the house. I know that's a weird, precarious place for us to be, but if it saves 2 or 3 phone calls in the event of emergency, to call Peter in the middle of the night during a snowstorm, that seems, because I really think when this building goes, it will be in the road. I think so. And that'll be a hazard to a lot of people.
I did want to say that as far as trying to save some of the architectural elements of the property, like Travis said, once I take whoever may be interested in that in, it may not be possible to do that because the safety of removing those items are key. And, I have to err on the side of safety always.
And I've worked with Miss Ellis with Knox Heritage for probably over a decade now, and I can attest that if there is someone that will make sure it's done at the appropriate time, she will do it. We can trust that she'll carry that out. All right.
Yeah, as a commission member that's never been in favor of demolitions and often has given Mr. Aarons a hard time about those. I mean, this is a very different property that's had a pretty extensive history of being open for, the city's taken a different approach with this property, and there's been a pretty long and adequate time for projects to come forward on this. And so it feels different than other demolition proposals in the past. So I feel like we're at a good compromise point with Ms. Ellis to be able to have that demolition permit in hand in case something goes wrong. I feel like everyone's done their due diligence at this point. It seems like, do I understand correctly that part of your project will be a deconstruction process as well? So there will be, yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. And to Mr. Tillman's point, that's the component of understanding how. So
Yeah.
that's part of the due diligence.
So yeah. And I just feel like for me, it's a pretty easy opportunity to show some support of our city partners.
Okay. Anyone else? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Approve the postponement? Or approve the demolition?
Demolition permit.
Okay. All right. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right. Thank you, Miss Elliott. I wish you the best. I hope you can make it happen.
I appreciate it. Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Okay. We have one more order of business that I'll kind of take us through, and I'll just say we're just accepting nominations. I omitted this from our public notice, so we will not be doing elections for chair and vice chair this month. We'll have to do it next month. But so if anybody would like to, and you guys don't have to make this is not binding. If you think of another chair or vice chair that you prefer in the next month, you can bring that up at the January meeting, but I did just want to bring that up. And I'd also say that our current chair and vice chair have another year that they are available to do this. So I was just going to open the floor for nominations for chair of the City Historic Zoning Commission for 2024.
I would love for someone else to take this seat.
No, for chair.
Does
that mean you want to be chair?
No, absolutely not. It's the opposite. Sorry, I just had to get that in.
Chair. No, sorry, this is.
I'll formally nominate our incumbent, Rick.
Okay.
Thank you. I did bring the Chick-fil-A today.
Okay, and we can, again, discuss further at the meeting, and then we will also just take nominations for vice chair for the 2024.
Does that conclude our business?
Do you have a nomination for the vice chair?
Well, I don't want to put someone on the spot.
Okay.
Is there anyone that would volunteer to do it?
I would nominate Travis.
Okay, there we go. We've got a nomination for Travis
You said you
Tillman.
didn't want to do it.
Yeah, but
Okay.
it's democracy.
Well, you want me to nominate Lynn?
And we can, we'll do the voting in the elections next month,
Okay.
so.
I do want to recognize we have one special guest with us today, Jonathan Hearns. Thank you for being here. Would you stand up, please? Let us see how sharp you look today. All right. Future commissioner right there. Thanks for coming, Jonathan. All right. Well, happy holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas, and we'll see you next year.